My name is Ken Anderson. I'm a member of the Teslin Tlingit Council. My Tlingit name is Teslin, and I also wanted to acknowledge that we're on the land, traditional territory of the Kwalin and the Ta'an First Nation, and it's a great honor to be here. And I'm here to talk about a piece that the Yukon Art Center recently acquired that was part of the Talk with Others show. The piece that I did was called "I Wouldn't Want That in My Backyard," and it was a quote that that I found in the text that we were to read as part of our kind of research for doing up a piece or pieces for the show. I found that quote kind of interesting because it just sort of referred to that kind of concept of far away, which we are up here, and sort of the concept of what we consider to be our backyard. From a First Nations point of view, I think that all of the land is our backyard. So the way that I grew up was to try and respect that as much as you could, and everything that was on it and everything that lived there was all a part of it. So as we look at the piece, what we see is we see a white picket fence, which is something that I think that non-native culture, or the culture that we live in today, it's about acquiring things and things like that. So to me, the white picket fence is something that is kind of cliche, that represents what we're supposed to want. Inside the picket fence, there's a pipeline that comes up and then goes, it looks like it comes out of the floor, out of the ground, and then back into the ground. So that was kind of symbolic to me of representing everything that we see, but everything that we don't see. So all the infrastructure and all the concepts, all the policies that that we don't see. It's sort of symbolic too of how things change and everything that's coming behind. You know, when one person comes, there's always usually more that come behind. And on top of the pipe, there's a copper kind of a design that's meant to represent art and culture, which is sort of one of the things that we seem to go back to as First Nations people when times are when we're searching for our identity. And we look at that kind of the history and the foundation and the cornerstone of the art and culture, or the culture, I should say, is in the arts and the language and things like that. And it's become a smaller piece of our culture, I think, in these times with so many different influences. So it's meant to represent that. Personally, I'd like to see it play a larger part, and I think, like I said, at times it does when we feel like we need to kind of get back to where we came from. And I think the land plays the same kind of a role in what we value. So that's what the piece was about in a nutshell. And the interesting thing to me was many people saw different things in that piece that were intended, but also not really necessarily intended. I talked about the picket fence and things like that. In the size of the piece, it kind of represents something that looks like kind of like a grave. And so it's kind of symbolic in two different ways. I mean, the way that people looked after the people that passed, the respect that we have for them, kind of represents that. And I think about all those people that went to the table and talked about that. Lots of them are still here, but lots of them are gone now. So it kind of represents that. And then the other part of it too is the pipeline didn't come to pass. So it's sort of like the idea of it is still there, but that didn't pass. So it's like it was put to rest because the pipe comes up out of the ground. It's surrounded by the fence. Many different things. I think the piece is kind of a fluid piece, and it's kind of interesting to watch how people interact with it and put their own interpretation on it. And I think it's a piece that provokes some thought, some consideration of where we came from and where we're going. And that's sort of what I always try and do with my work. And it was a great honor to be involved in that show, and I thank the Arts Center and Valerie for inviting me to be a part of that. And